In human design, this 12 signs of the astrological wheel are actually, what's mapped onto them is the 64 hexagrams of the I Ching, of the Taoist oracle, the 5,000-year oracle of China. So basically about 5 degrees of a sign is one of these hexagrams. And so when you were born, a planet is actually one of these hexagrams, which in design they call a gate. And these gates, these 64 numbers here, are actually found in these 9 energetic centers in our body, in our DNA. And this is actually getting us deep into the genetics or our coding, because the 64 hexagrams of the I Ching relate directly to the 64 codons in our DNA. So of course the ancient Chinese knew this, they knew a thing or two about who we are. And so these 9 centers, the codons here, the hexagrams here, are all actually linked to this sort of energetic vortex we can think of almost like the chakras. So this brings in the Chinese oracular system of the I Ching with the chakras of the Hindu system. But instead of 7 centers, design and the teaching that Ra was given was that part of our Aquarian evolution, or this collective evolution we all feel ourselves going through, is that we are more nuanced and subtle and more complex of beings at this time. We're a 9-centered being. And so these centers act similarly to the chakras in terms of being, energy vortexes. But they're slightly different as well. So, and so we have the Hindu chakra system coming in, we have astrology coming in, the I Ching, and then you see that these centers are actually connected by these pathways. So these pathways act as almost like a full archetype in and of themselves, a full pattern of energy. Because what happens is they're linking these 2 centers, and it's like the tree of life in Kabbalah, if anyone studied Kabbalah. You have the Sephiroth and you have the pathways related to the arcana of the tarot as well. So these actually connect these 2 centers, but also these particular gates. So you're combining this hexagram and this hexagram, and there's an archetype that forms out of this. So when you were born, the planets were in their positions, and every one of these gates is associated with signs of the zodiac, very specific degrees. So when you see a body graph like this, if you see a black gate like that, that's part of your conscious design. So that's where the planets were when you were born. They were in that gate, in that center. Now, human design has something interesting, which is they have something called the unconscious design. So there's the conscious, sometimes you'll see it called the conscious personality, unconscious design, various names. But what we see is this is formed, this unconscious is formed out of where the planets were 88 days before you were born. And the logic behind this, what was given to Ra, and if you do some research you'll find that, this is a little bit, it's not always the most, it's not totally exact. You can't find this exact information. But what he was told was that this is 88 days. This is 88 days before we were born. And the logic was that this is when the neocortex forms. So the neocortex forming is the imprint of this human part of our nature. It's the newest part of the mammal. And that the logic behind this is that this is when a lot of our inheritance comes in. Patterns in our soul, lineage, so ancestral patterns come in here really strong. So this unconscious design is just as important as this conscious personality, but what's happening is that it's often less at the surface. It's like the glacier, We can think of the conscious as what we see, but then there's also the glacier that's underneath the water. So it's operating, but we may not always be aware of necessarily how it's operating or its consistent function in our life. Okay? So you have this unconscious design, this conscious personality. This is the planet.